just start working. Don't get stuck. Don't overthink it. Go out, start working, make mistakes. Your work will be crap at first. It's fine. My work, every time I start something new, it is junk. Wade through it. Just keep going. And in the case of photography, sooner or later the world will whisper in your ear. But you have to be prepared to listen, be out there and working and listening.
Hi there. If someone was walking through a group show and they just happened upon a single image made by Paul Graham, they would in all likelihood move on fairly swiftly, particularly if they didn't know what he's been up to for the last 40 years. Most of his images fall into an unfamiliar territory that is not easily categorized. You might begin to assign the work to the domain of straight documentary. But then again, you find yourself a little uncertain about what is being shown to you. You might think the picture was made by a snapshot street photographer, but the print has the definition of a large format camera. Perhaps it could be a conceptual stage photograph, but it's also very real and ordinary. If you're asking this type of question about his work, then you're getting closer to understanding his intention. In the 1990s, I remember coming across an early publication of his work in a second-hand bookshop. I couldn't immediately grasp what he was up to, but I could sense there was something substantial being said, so I bought the book. Over the years, I followed his work and developed a greater understanding of his photographic practice. I'll present a framework that might shed light on the intention behind his photographs and expand on his commitment to probing the medium of photography itself. He speaks about his work really eloquently, so I'll try and include as many video clips as possible. He began his first major project, A1, the Great North Road, in the early 1980s. It was the time of Margaret Thatcher, rising unemployment, and the ongoing conflict in Northern Ireland. For Graham, it was a time to rebel against the standing order, like the punk rockers of that period. He wanted to produce work that was a departure from the photography establishment. Sid Vicious and Johnny Rotten weren't big fans of the pop and rock icons of that period. Johnny Rotten famously wore a t-shirt with the slogan, "I hate Pink Floyd."
From a body of work about us following one road called A1, the Great North Road. And I just drove up and down this road many times for 2 years. The interest for me was to photograph everything, to do portraits, to do landscapes, to do night shots, to do still life, if that is, to do surprising things, to do this whole rich range of images along the road. At this time, serious work, as it thought it was serious, self-serious work, was black and white documentary photography.
Like Stephen Shaw, Graham sought out form and even poetry within banal spaces, showing how pictures of the mundane can reveal social tensions and the lived experience. Graham's work was distinctly more socially and politically charged than Shaw's. His next series, Beyond Caring, was his real punk-like rebellion against the established photography order. The photographs were produced in unemployment offices throughout Britain. This work was an affront to those who saw themselves as serious, committed photographers. It was against the rules to work in color, and this wasn't the accepted medium with which to engage serious photographic subjects.
And yes, I was working inside. These are in very intimate offices in London. Here someone has decided to brighten up the office with, they put some murals on the wall with pictures of Victorian poverty in the middle of contemporary poverty. It was a challenge to take the lessons that were coming from America in the 1970s with your Stephen Shore and your William Eggleston. Many other people were working then. I believe Anthony Hernandez was working then in color too. And apply this to the ethic of British social documentary photography. This one of a baby in Birmingham in the pink coat, that was a controversial image because the pink is a happy color, and that cannot be right. This woman with a headscarf, very beautiful. This was my office. I was unemployed at the time myself, workless, and it was the places I would go to as well in making the work.
The title of his next project, Troubled Land, comes from the term used by Britons when they referred to the conflict in Northern Ireland. They always referred to it as the Troubles. This work is still a subtle rebellion against the traditions of photography. Instead of photographing the actual clashes like a photojournalist or concentrating on, say, landscapes of the most impacted communities, Graham drove around looking for small traces of disruption within the landscape. Earlier, when he had encountered the work of the new topographic photographers, Graham said that it was a revelation. Not so much their style, but the thinking behind the work. The idea that one could engage with real social conditions through the landscape in a quiet manner.
This one looks like a very ordinary greenfield site, and at the top of it there's a flag flying in the tree, at the top of the tree, a little flag that says this is part of the United Kingdom, because that is a unionist area who wanted Ireland, that Northern Ireland, to stay in the union with Britain. And then images like this, very ordinary if you're used to the landscape of the United Kingdom, a very ordinary landscape, but with small details that are wrong. The lamps have been smashed, the rocks are ripped up, the railings have graffiti on them saying IRA, and in the background is a soldier running across the road there with his gun. So these small details in what appear to be a very ordinary landscape are loaded. I think same thing here. Big picture looking down a town called Strabane on the border of North and South Ireland. And right down at the bottom there, which you cannot see, there's a close-up. You see these little young men parading to the Irish flag. They were young provisionals, young IRA volunteers parading to the flag. With it, there's some soldiers, some British soldiers searching a car at the side of the sea. On the left is the Republic of Ireland, on the right is Northern Ireland.
For his next series, New Europe, Graham shifted his interest beyond his United Kingdom homeland and reflected on the tension between the shadow of history and the push towards the creation of a new borderless Europe, the EU. At that time, Franco had passed away and Spain was a democracy. But when he began the project in the late 80s, the Berlin Wall was still intact. It fell midway through the project. This is a very unjournalistic picture. It shows a hole in the ground left after a post was removed from the border fence.
This man is in Madrid, standing on the edge of the road. He has one arm as wounded, gone. You have no idea why. I don't know why. There's a picture, this is in Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam, and people had attacked the picture of Hitler with their keys out of their pocket or coins and scratched Hitler out of the exhibition to prove their political credentials. Some coins on a shelf in Spain. The coins actually have the head of Franco still on them. This is where people put their money to play on the games machines, so they put their cigarette that burned and their coins for the next game.
In the late 1980s and early 1990s, he began traveling more often to the US, and he noticed that there was a greater appreciation and institutional support for photography than there was in the UK. Major UK institutions like the Tate didn't have dedicated photography departments or show serious photography on a regular basis. On a personal level, he found that the move was liberating. It offered him a new start, a big canvas to explore new photographic possibilities. Many photographers' careers have faltered when they begin to engage with a new country. They have a limited depth of understanding about their adopted country's culture. So in this new environment, they tend to only skim the surface. But I think Graham was able to remain on safe ground because he focused on broader life themes and also began to deconstruct the medium of photography itself. His work in the US remained socially aware, but he wasn't trying to do a Robert Frank. With this first American project, American Night, I'm going to use clips of Graham explaining the photographs.
I started to photograph all across America, wherever I was, and about how really want to make work about the awareness within America, the consciousness of the poor, the dispossessed, the marginalized. So I started working with this invisibility, this idea of making the pictures very light, which look like I have a white thing on the camera, but I don't. They're just overexposed. It's just opening the aperture, letting in too much light, so the picture burns out, and you work out with this very high key, very bright picture that you think nothing is there. And then your eye starts to adapt, and you realize there is a man in there, he's walking. And then snapping back to full color, this prosperous American dream, which is an illusion for a lot of people. They will never get there. It's a dream for many people. For some, it's basically about the social fracture of the country.
In this essay, A Shimmer of Possibility, nothing really happens. Unlike William Eggleston's Democratic Forest, Graham makes no attempt to emphasize aesthetic beauty within the ordinary. These pictures bewildered many viewers. He was responding to the everyday, but in a stripped-down Buddhist monk-type manner, accepting whatever turned up. Some of his critics felt that he was straying too far into the domain of minimalism and the conceptual. But Graham has, throughout his career, rebelled against the establishment. In this case, he was just transforming himself into a monastic punk rocker. Michael Mack from Mack Books described this publication as one of the most important photo books of the 21st century.
Photographing an interesting thing does not mean you'll have an interesting photograph. So, in other words, you don't go out and search for the most dramatic and interesting and amazing thing you can ever find, and take a photograph of it and think, wow, haven't I got an amazing photograph? Because everybody would pull out their iPhone, their cell phone, their camera, and take a picture of somebody with a tattooed face or a parrot sitting on top of their head or whatever. Everyone would do this. It's so obvious. It's not interesting. It's in the title. Everything shimmers with possibility. It's a shimmer of possibility. The world is glowing. It's alive with infinite possibility.
His essay, The Present, deals with the very ordinary moments of street life. But unlike, say, Gary Winogrand, he's not seeking out moments of peak interest. His diptychs and sequences present frames captured a few seconds apart on the streets of New York.
The work, The Present, very much deals with this focal awareness, this consciousness of one plane, of something happening and then another thing happening on a different thing. Yes, there's a dialogue about the nature of seeing, which is the nature of photography, to my mind. They're very similar things. This focus is very particular here. A man stands on the side of the road. He's smoking a cigarette, slowly waiting to cross the road, no hurry. The woman in green behind is out of focus, but she's walking. 1 second later, a taxi comes across, but the focus has moved to the woman in green, just looking at her, rubbing her head. The taxi goes, the man breathes out the cigarette.
These 3 US-based essays interrogate the fundamental controls that photographers use when creating pictures. American Night, with its blown-out aesthetic, deals with aperture, which by extension encompasses all aspects of light. A Shimmer of Possibility, with its stuttered capturing of frames, deals with the camera shutter. This is essentially an exploration of the concept of time. While the present deals with focus, it questions where or on whom we decide to place our consciousness. Over his career, his work has evolved from socially explicit documentary-style photographs to more poetic, philosophical explorations. There's a lot more that could be discussed, but I think I'll leave it there. Thanks for staying with me, and I'll see you next time.
I think that's part of an artist's job, is to scare themselves every time, or at least for me, to frighten yourself and challenge yourself every time. I can't imagine having one idea and making one piece of work and just repeating it for 30 or 40 years. I cannot imagine that as a creative life. I think it's wrong.